On the windswept Montana prairie of 1889, Sarah Ashworth has spent her life in her sister's shadow, dutiful, unseen, and unchosen. But when her family's desperate plan sends her in place of her sister to wed a stranger in the Dakota Badlands, Sarah's journey becomes a test of courage, honesty, and heart. Facing the rugged homesteader Lucas Vance and the unforgiving frontier, she must decide whether love can be born from truth and sacrifice. Watch till the end to see how Sarah's fate unfolds, and tell us, partner, where you're watching from. Join our Sleep West family, and let's ride into the story together.
The first rays of dawn sliced through the crisp air, chasing the nighttime chill from the wooden facade of the Ashworth cabin on the high Montana prairie. Inside, Sarah Ashworth leaned her shoulder against the rough-hewn timber of the window frame, gazing over the endless sweep of sagebrush and plains. At 22, her life was one of unrelenting labor. The scent of lye soap clung to her hands, her practical gingham dress was perpetually dusted with flour or soil, and her manner was as reserved and unadorned as the landscape she surveyed. She was the one who kept the household running, the quiet force no one truly saw, the one who was always overlooked. That spotlight belonged to Clara, her younger sister, all flaxen curls and airy grace, the acknowledged family beauty. "Sarah, come here, now." Her father's voice, a gravelly roar honed by years of shouting over the wind, jolted her. With a sigh, Sarah descended the steep, narrow stairs. The main room felt charged with a heavy, cold silence. Her mother sat rigidly at the table, a worn apron clutched in her fists. Her father stood by the hearth, his face grim, and Clara, radiating a tragic loveliness, dabbed at her eyes with a delicate square of linen. Sarah's stomach twisted with apprehension. "Tell her, Robert." Her mother's voice was a strained whisper. Clara looked up, her lower lip trembling dramatically. "I can't go through with it, Sarah. I simply cannot. Imagine a tiny shack in the Dakota Badlands, married to some trapper. I'd sooner live in a convent." Sarah knew the situation. Clara had exchanged letters for months with a man named Lucas Vance, a homesteader and former Union scout. His promised financial support for the journey had been a lifeline for their struggling claim near the settlement of Haven's End. It meant Clara would have security, and the family one less hungry mouth. "You gave your solemn word," her father said, his tone low and dangerous. "I had no idea what I was truly agreeing to," Clara protested, her tears flowing anew. "Besides, Mr. Alistair Finch proposed to me yesterday. He owns the trading post. I could remain here, settled, surrounded by comfort." "Silence!" Robert Ashworth slammed his palm down, making the tin cups rattle. "That man sent gold. Our name, our reputation, is tied up in this agreement." Then Clara spoke the words that would shatter and reforge Sarah's world. "Then let Sarah go in my place." The shock made the air thicken. Sarah felt her own heart thud against her ribs. "What?" she managed, the word barely a breath. Clara composed herself, the tears instantly drying. "Mr. Vance has never seen me, only a sketch I sent years ago, a vague drawing. Sarah is more suited to a harsh life. She's practical. She's strong. Practical. Strong." Sarah knew what that truly meant. Unattractive, unpicked, and utterly disposable. "It's a betrayal," Sarah choked out, her voice raw. "Is it?" Robert Ashworth's eyes held a shrewd, desperate calculation. "You are both Ashworth daughters. He sought a wife. He shall receive one. And what future awaits you here? Who will ever seek your hand while Clara is nearby?" The cruel truth was a physical blow. Sarah had spent her life watching men's eyes slide right past her to her sister. Clara received gifts. Sarah did the chores. "I refused to deceive him," Sarah whispered, shaking her head. "Then you will tell him the truth when you arrive," her father said, shrugging off the responsibility. "Let him make the final decision, but you will leave. You will safeguard this family's name." His decision was absolute, like the crack of an old rifle. 2 days later, Sarah stood on the platform of the small rail station. Her belongings were in a single, worn satchel, mended shifts, a book of hymns, some dried apples. Her father's grip on her arm was a bruising warning not to fail them. Her mother slipped a warm biscuit into her hand, her eyes swimming with silent apology. Clara stood aloof in a velvet traveling suit, her radiance undimmed by a single speck of remorse. Their eyes met, and Sarah saw a profound sense of escape in her sister's gaze. "All aboard for the Western Territory," the conductor shouted. Sarah boarded the train. As the iron wheels began their slow rhythmic turn westward, she looked back. Her family was already receding, only her mother raising a hesitant hand in a final wave. The journey was relentless. The train groaned and rattled across vast, untamed territory. The green farmlands of eastern Montana yielded to the harsh, ochre-colored earth of the Dakota Badlands. Sarah's hands blistered. Her dress became stiff with dust, but she bore it all in silence. The retired schoolmistress in the next seat offered quiet company and sturdy advice. Yet, all of Sarah's focus was on the stranger waiting at the journey's end. She read and reread his occasional correspondence, penned in a bold, forthright hand. Lucas Vance, 31 years old, a homesteader, a man hardened by frontier battles against the harsh elements and the wary nomadic Arapaho tribes. His writing hinted at a deep, private reserve, a longing for a durable partnership, someone capable of thriving in the wilderness and turning his rough structure into a sanctuary. Those letters were intended for the idealized Clara. What would his face show when Sarah stepped onto the platform? Finally, the train wheezed to a halt at the desolate outpost of Fort Solitude. "End of the line, miss," the porter announced. Sarah stepped down, her patched shoes hitting the gritty earth. The wind immediately tugged her worn bonnet. She clutched her small satchel, her throat dry. "Miss Ashworth?" The voice was deep and resonant, and she spun around. The man before her was strikingly tall, built like a blacksmith, with dark, untidy hair beneath a broad-brimmed hat. His face was etched with experience, and his eyes were the cold, clear blue of glacial ice, fixed on her with palpable, quiet confusion. "Mr. Vance," Sarah managed, forcing her voice steady. "I am Sarah Ashworth, Clara's sister. There is something you must know immediately. Clara is not coming. My family sent me in her stead." His brow immediately furrowed, a heavy, dark line. "Your sister is not coming." A flush of deep shame stained Sarah's cheeks. "I know this is not what you were led to expect. You were promised Clara, not me." I protested, but they insisted. "I traveled here to tell you the truth, and I will understand if you wish to put me straight back on the next train." Lucas Vance studied her in complete silence, his gaze unblinking and unreadable. Sarah forced herself to meet his intense stare, even as her heart hammered painfully. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "You traveled 5 long days, alone across hostile country, to marry a man you'd never seen. I came to uphold my family's word, and to grant you the right to choose." Sarah affirmed, her chin lifting fractionally. Something in his expression flickered, a brief flash of recognition or respect, though his voice remained flat. "I see. My buckboard is this way. You will spend the night at the claim. We will discuss this further at daybreak." He took her satchel as if it weighed nothing and walked toward a rugged, 2-horse buckboard. Sarah followed, her pulse erratic. Whatever the morrow held, she had done the difficult, honest thing. And honesty, she reminded herself, must hold some value. The buckboard bumped down the faint track, taking Sarah away from the meager lights of Fort Solitude and deeper into the immense dark Dakota night. Stars shone with an intensity she had never witnessed, stretching across the sky in a breathtaking, countless blanket. Beside her, Lucas held the reins with a natural, practiced ease, silent, except for the soft commands to the horses. The void of conversation between them felt overwhelming. Sarah desperately wanted to explain her family's desperation, to ask what he truly thought of her, but the words felt trapped. "How old are you, Sarah?" Lucas asked abruptly, his voice abrupt and unfiltered. 22, she replied softly. "And why have you not settled?" The question was as sharp as flint. Sarah kept her gaze fixed on the distance. "Because I was always the one who stayed in the shadow when my sister entered the room." Lucas was silent again for a long moment, his clear blue eyes focused on the barely visible road. "But you still arrived." "I came to tell you the truth," Sarah reiterated, "and to allow you to make your choice." He offered no reply, only the grinding sound of the wheels and the horse's steady breathing. Yet Sarah felt a subtle hardening of his profile, as if her statement had struck a nerve deep within him. By the time they reached the claim, the moon was high. Sarah caught her breath at the sheer scale of the homestead. The house was not a shack. It was a sturdy single-story log structure, built into the side of a low rise, its windows radiating a welcoming soft lamplight. A massive stable and corral stood nearby, and fences stretched out toward the high, remote peaks in the distance. This was a fortress of self-reliance, built with immense effort. Lucas helped her down, his hands firm and utterly impersonal. "I'll bring your satchel. The spare room is in the back." Inside, the cabin was Spartan but impeccably organized. A heavy table, a stone hearth, pegs for tools. Everything was neatly in place, devoid of any decorative touch. Sarah's eyes were drawn to the stack of hand-drawn maps on the small writing desk. In the small kitchen area, Lucas served a generous portion of thick bean soup from a kettle resting on the warm stove. "Eat," he instructed simply. Sarah complied, the simple, robust flavor a welcome change from her travel rations. Lucas sat opposite her watching. "Are you competent in the kitchen?" he asked. "Yes, I can manage a home, preserve goods and assist with simple chores. I was raised on a subsistence farm," Sarah answered, her voice regaining its earlier composure. "I am dependable." Lucas regarded her steadily. "Your family deceived me," he stated at last. "Your sister was dishonest. You were not." A fragile wave of relief washed over Sarah, though she quickly mastered it. She had prepared herself for bitter resentment or immediate dismissal. But his words were level and just, not unkind. When the meal was finished, he carried her satchel to the small room. "We will speak more tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "Rest now." Alone, Sarah lay on the narrow cot, listening to the lonely yipping of a coyote. Tomorrow he would make his final decision. Tomorrow her fate would be sealed. The next morning broke sharp and clear. Sarah woke early, her hands instinctively moving through their usual routine, raking the ashes, starting the fire, preparing cornmeal and frying salt pork. By the time Lucas entered from the stable, a simple, hearty breakfast was ready on the table. He stopped in the doorway, a flash of surprise in his glacial eyes. "You had no obligation to do that." "I am accustomed to contributing," Sarah replied, setting down a platter of golden corn cakes. They ate in a much less strained silence. Lucas seemed to be assessing her now, not for beauty, but for capability and resilience. After the meal, he stood up. "I will show you the claim." Outside, the air was scented with dry earth and wild juniper. Lucas pointed out the spring-fed trough, the covered wagon shed, the pasture stretching toward the desolate Badlands hills. 300 acres, he said. Every post, every stone moved by my own strength. I needed something to create, rather than destroy. Sarah listened quietly. His voice held a low, controlled intensity, the sound of a man who had faced conflict and found his grounding here. "I require a wife," Lucas declared bluntly. "Not a fragile doll, not a decoration. A partner. Someone who can survive a dust-out without abandoning the claim." Sarah met his gaze without flinching. "I understand lean times, Mr. Vance. I know what it is to be unseen, to be a substitute. I do not seek luxury. I seek a permanent place." A faint, fleeting emotion crossed his blue eyes, though he offered no reply. Just then, a rider approached, a young man with a friendly sunburned face. He reined in his pony and touched his hat brim. "Morning, Lucas. Ma'am, Jacob Finn. Glad to see you finally have company, Lucas. You're a lucky devil." A wave of warmth rushed into Sarah's cheeks at the young man's open, sincere admiration. She couldn't recall the last time a man had looked at her with such direct approval. Jacob turned back to Lucas. "The water tank is leaking again up near the northern perimeter. The Nomad Creek runoff is getting worse." Lucas's jaw tightened. "We will go and secure it." He glanced at Sarah. "We will return by noon." As the two men rode off, Sarah stood in the yard, her heart thrumming. Jacob's appreciative look was unsettling. But more notable was Lucas's reaction. That subtle momentary tightening of his jaw, the watchful intensity in his eyes. She went inside, determined to impose order. She scrubbed the floors, aired out the bedding, and put fresh water in a jar with some wild daisies. By the time Lucas and Jacob returned, the cabin felt lighter, warmer, less solitary. The neighbor Maud Keller visited, recognizing Sarah's worth immediately. "Fragility wouldn't last a fortnight here. What you possess, that staying power." Her words were profound encouragement. Lucas returned to find Sarah tending the small garden. He silently joined her, sharing the labor. Later, over supper, Lucas grew reserved, his eyes tracking the interaction between Sarah and Jacob, as Jacob complimented her. After Jacob left, Lucas admitted, "The cabin feels different. One day and it feels inhabited." Sarah simply nodded. "A house requires care, like a field." The silence between them became pregnant with possibility. The days settled into a routine. One evening, Sarah discovered draft letters Lucas had written to Clara, exposing his raw honesty and loneliness. Confronted, Lucas was vulnerable. He worried the letters made him sound weak. Sarah contradicted him. "They made you sound real." Lucas then asked her to see the canyon, where the river meets the ridge. At the magnificent viewpoint, he confessed, "This view was my anchor during the war. I think I was writing to the wrong sister all along." Sarah, deeply moved, reaffirmed, "I am not Clara. I can only be me." Lucas replied, "That is all I have ever wanted." 2 days later, a violent blizzard struck. When a mare was trapped in the icy creek, Sarah ignored Lucas's shouts and plunged in after him. When the current dragged Lucas down, Sarah lunged and saved him. Back in the cabin, Lucas, shaking, took her hand. "You are not most women," he declared his choice. "I don't need Clara's glamour. I need you. You are the strength I would choose, every time." Sarah whispered, "Then choose me, Lucas Vance." "Out of honesty." "I already have," he vowed. They married quietly. That summer, Clara arrived, attempting to reclaim her intended life, but Lucas stood firm. "Sarah is my chosen life, my true partner," he told her. Clara left defeated. Facing the hard winter together, their bond deepened. One evening, Lucas affirmed their destiny. "You were never a substitution, Sarah. You were the intended destiny." "Forever," Sarah whispered.